I think one of the parts that marketers tend to struggle is the technical requirement. A lot of times marketers end up kind of playing that role of being like a project manager for Braze and the Braze related engineering requests. Writing Jira tickets and having detailed technical requirements is a skill. I think it's something that doesn't come naturally. A lot of times, even when we're supporting writing requirements for engineers, like we have to think so much. What are all the cases we need to think about? Where exactly on the mobile app or the website will this click be triggered that will ingest the data? What data types are they going to be in? There's so much to think about. It is inevitable that we do need to work with engineers, especially for net new use cases, net new data ingestion.
Hello everyone. Today I'm joined by Allan, founder and CEO for Now Marketing. He is a former senior CSM at Braze, and today he holds, I believe, more than 15 Braze certification. And I
15,
believe,
yeah.
yeah, it would be more than 15, but yeah, at least 15 Braze certifications, and he's also two-time Braze Forge speaker. Uh, he's so passionate about Braze that he built BrazeSmith, a tool that we are going to dig into in some time during this session. One of his former colleagues at Braze put it best. Alan had a hunger to dig into the product and marketing strategy, and you're going to see that very side of him today during overall conversation. We'll cover the biggest challenges team face in Braze, including campaigns being stuck in backlog, messy canvases, or journeys, whatever we term, which are hard to audit, and even how to leverage powerful feature like content cards, push in the best possible manner. All right, without further ado, let's start. Welcome, Alan here, and we are pretty excited to have you being part of this Braze series.
Yeah, I'm also excited. Thank you so much for having me. Let's jump into all the fun Braze conversations.
No, definitely, this is going to be super insightful for everyone who is going to hear it out. But yeah, to start with, let's talk about being, let's say, a Braze expert getting bottlenecked, right? Which is quite often for brands where there's only one person who is managing Braze, right? And there are challenges where to make campaigns live on a timely manner. A lot of marketers wish they could launch Braze campaigns without relying on engineering team, right, at all. But the reality is some engineering involvement is always going to be there, and it is almost inevitable because you have your data residing somewhere in, let's say, Snowflake or similar data warehouses. You want to put it into the Braze, you want to leverage it, and campaigns often stall when requests sit in backlog or requirements aren't clear because engineering team would also have their own set of priorities to manage. From your experience at Braze and now at For Now Marketing, where you worked with multiple brands and supported them and consulted them, where do you see marketers struggle most with this, and what have you seen teams do to keep execution moving, right, without compromising on their timeline?
Yeah, it's a really big question to get us started, right? And I think there's layers to this question. So let's start from a brand new, like early stage, like maybe a team just adopted Braze. Braze really relies on the data that's being ingested to their dashboard, right? The marketers have all these amazing use cases, they want to launch these campaigns, but without the proper data to support the trigger, the segmentation, and the personalization, that's usually why they're stuck. There's a roadblock where they don't have the data that they need in Braze. In that case, you really can't do much unless the collaboration and the work has been done with the engineering team already to request specific data. When is it triggered? What are we grabbing? Like, what format will it be in? And then once that is all done and then it's received in Braze, then the marketer is able to use their creativity and launch their campaigns. So that part I just mentioned, the collaboration with engineering, I think one of the parts that marketers tend to struggle is the technical requirements. I don't, we have scrum masters, we have product managers. They're usually the ones that write GR requirements, not marketing managers, not Braze owners. And sometimes, a lot of times, marketers end up kind of playing that role of being like a project manager for Braze and the Braze related engineering requests. And when it's, Jira, writing Jira tickets and having detailed technical requirements is a skill. I think it's something that doesn't come naturally. a lot of times, even when we're supporting writing requirements for engineers, like we have to think so much. It's like a whole committed like 30-minute task to write a ticket. When we think about what are all the cases we need to think about, where exactly on the mobile app or the website will this click be triggered that will, ingest the data? What properties do we need to grab? Like, what data types are they going to be in? And is there a specific format that we need them to be in to make our marketing execution easy? There's so much to think about. So that's that's the first part. I think the collaboration with engineering, and it is inevitable that we do need to work with engineers, especially for net new use cases, net new data ingestion. Um, that's part one, and I'll try to keep part two. But let's say you're working with, you already have the data. Great, you're good to go. You're ready to launch, but there are some data manipulations you need to make, or some, Braze triggered API calls or communications that you need to set up that isn't quite like worth an engineering ticket, or like, there are better ways to do it in Braze. That's the second part where marketers get stuck, right? It's like, how technical can they be? One of the ways is Liquid. How well do they understand Liquid personalization language? It's Shopify's personalization language. So you can do so much: for loops, if statements, reformatting a string into a specific format, or splitting a full name so you can just grab the first name, things like that. Oftentimes, like, it can be a blocker, but with just a little push, just a little bit of nudge, and that's a lot of times where we come in to help customers, is like, it's that technical marketing skills where we can kind of format the message copy and the look the way we want it to. And, and a lot of times it's like APIs, webhooks. Sometimes we just need to transfer data from Braze to the other end, or set up a webhook where we're waiting for data from an external source. That's not quite data ingestion related. So for existing data campaigns, when it comes to the execution, there's another layer of technical execution that might be required. So kind of a big answer there, but just to summarize, net new data requires engineering for data ingestion, and then even for existing data use cases might require a little bit more technical execution from the marketer's end within Braze. And I think those two are the places where marketers struggle the most.
Totally aligned with the answer, and thanks for giving a detailed walkthrough of both the scenarios where data ingestion is not being taken care of, right? And data is already part of a Braze, and the second scenario is where data is not there in Braze, and you need to put it and ingest into the Braze through your third-party platforms. But one thing which I have realized, and I also learned while working with multiple Braze brands, is the engineering team doesn't hold that awareness of Braze, right? Like how much it is going to make an impact for an overall brand, right? Being an engineering team, they are more worried about the tech stack they normally have seen so far and implemented. Uh,
Exactly.
how you make them aware and make them, or try to bring Braze into that culture, right, between marketing and technical team, so that they also understand the importance of Braze, and are also able to identify that, okay, why we are asking for such set of information, as you mentioned
Yeah.
about Jira ticket, right? So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
question what I'm trying to understand is, or the point we would love to hear from is, how to get or give that, transfer that knowledge or educate the engineering team on importance of Braze for a
Yeah.
brand who has already started adopting it.
Yeah, that's such an interesting question, because we see this firsthand from our customers, right? We actually get engineers from both ends. There are Braze dedicated engineers. They're like, yeah, of course, Braze is so important. Of course, we have a dedicated engineer for all your Braze and marketing teams needs. And then we see engineers that are like, isn't Braze just a marketing tool? Like, why is there so many Jira tickets coming from it? I don't understand. I thought we'd done with onboarding a year ago. So I've seen, like, both sides of the spectrum where, and like you said, engineers aren't quite sure where Braze plays a role. I think, Braze is a big investment for a lot of companies. It is very likely their biggest investment for like one of their softwares. And it serves a huge role, right? It can do all of your, acquisition marketing, all your retention marketing. It can do your product marketing, especially Braze, as it's good with push, in-app messages, content cards. There are Braze users who are playing the role of a lifecycle marketing manager, product marketing manager, CRM manager. Like, Braze can do a lot. That's the point. I think to make the education and awareness for engineers, there's a few. I think stakeholder alignment, so leadership alignment, is pretty important. I think that's when maybe the CMO and the CTO are on the same page, where the CMO says, "We bought this tool, we invested into Braze, which is an awesome tool, and we need the support from our technical engineers to really just feed us the data that we need to be able to use it." And I think it's like all things. You need to make a business case for why we need engineering resources for Braze. But for Braze, I feel like it's pretty easy to get approved just because how like powerful it is and how much it could do. And part of that can go into the Jira ticket, like we talked about as well, on a more micro level. Like, why is this request happening? Because this request unlocks these use cases, which is part of our marketing team's OKR for this quarter. And, based on past experiences, this would be a really detailed Jira ticket, but, we've seen this % conversion from based campaigns. Our prediction or our hypothesis is that if we have one more data to really personalize it, we'd love to see 1 or 2% increment. And from a large scale, 1% increment in conversion could lead to a pretty high revenue for a lot of teams. So I think it's a business case. I think it's leadership alignment. And I think the marketers definitely need to do their homework in explaining to the engineers, like, what can Braze do? What is it? And like, why am I asking for it? So I think it's a little bit of effort from both ends. Yeah.
It's a learning curve, right, for the engineering team. But yeah, if as a marketer we give the clear download on why we are leveraging it and the importance of it, I'm definitely aligned that the engineering team would be able to adapt and understand it. One other area which we have seen commonly, and I'm sure you would have faced this multiple times, are when there are brands who have started adopting Braze, they've spent certain years into Braze, they would have built multiple canvas, but then there would be a situation where to manage a campaign, or the situation where the logic of the canvas is broken, right? Because of XYZ reasons, right? Because of the data ingestion, because of the changes in the data structure. It could be anything else, right? So as I mentioned, after a year or two in Braze, right, when you already set up everything, many teams start to lose that track of what's already live, right? What's outdated, what needs to be revamped, what might be even broken, right? Which needs to be corrected, right? And that can make audits and compliance reviews really painful when you're going to review too many things, when you're not sure that, okay, these are, let's say, 180 days old, 360 days old journeys or canvas, right? Which
Exactly.
needs a prior focus. These are like recently revamped, so there are higher probability that things would be running smooth. So what we are trying to understand here is what's the system you use, right, as a Braze expert, right, to keep assets clean and trackable, and what blind spots do you usually identify or uncover when you go in and audit a team's setup?
I think it's an evolving process. I think, and we're still kind of on the earlier side where a lot of it is just, you just roll up your sleeves and it's manual, right? You open all the canvases and you just take a look, and just try to audit it. But I think more and more every year, so we have a spreadsheet. We have a spreadsheet template that we rely on, and it's going to list all the canvases and maybe all the canvas steps as well as all the campaigns. And the columns that we're checking for in this spreadsheet seems to increase every time we do an audit, and it's also different for every customers. They kind of want us to audit for different things, or different customers are using different features that require an additional audit or maybe less audit. I think we rely as much as possible on API endpoints. So there are some API endpoints like campaign list and canvas slash list, as well as campaign slash details and canvas slash details. So the idea is it can automatically pull all the campaigns you have in your Braze dashboard, and then it can grab you details from all the campaigns for the dashboard. So you could actually scrape all the HTML for all your emails that live in Braze, including their subject line, pre-header, sending address, reply to address, and the HTML body, all within an API call. You can write a script for that. And then it's a matter of like, okay, do we have a good process for like checking, okay, the from address is right, the subject line looks good. There are certain things that's available in the API, and there are certain things that's not available in the API, like what is the trigger, who is it sending to, and it's those parts where it's just at the end of the day, at least what we're doing right now is we are kind of auditing manually and we're writing it down on the spreadsheet. From a service partner perspective, we like to do this because it really helps us learn their dashboard really quickly. It's like, oh, like that's kind of one of the first things we do for everybody. We first month onboarding, let us look at your campaigns and canvases and see what you have set up, see what's your go-to like trigger data, see what your go-to segmentations are. So it helps us learn, but you know, your question is more of how can teams do this at scale? Maybe they're not bringing on an onboarding like a different service partner. I think it's gonna come soon, but just with the integration of AI and Braze is also talking more about MCPs, and I'm seeing teams get more and more technical and building internal tools where they're kind of scraping their dashboard. So like they're opening every dashboard and maybe it's taking screenshots or taking like just like the like JavaScript or the HTML like scraping of each page and determining and being able to list the triggers for each page. So I think it's happening. I think it's still early days where teams have to kind of build their own in-house solutions, but I would say to summarize, we need a clear list of things we're checking for. And sometimes when you're auditing, you don't realize you need to check for this, and we end up doing two audits, like two like full run-throughs. I think that's okay. I think that's actually natural and might even be a little bit healthy. But yeah, it's really just good spreadsheet management, project management, and then as you're auditing, it kind of almost tells a story of like what did we used to do that is like now broken, or you know where can we go from there? What's missing? And then last thing I'll add is teams. The really heavily technical teams that have more resources have trackers set up for all their campaigns. So like daily campaign volume, daily canvas volume. They'll have monitors set up where they're pinged and alerted if a canvas all of a sudden drops below like an X percentage of what they're used to seeing. For campaigns, there is a feature available directly out of the dashboard. For canvases, there isn't, but the teams that have good data partners and resources, they have access to being able to set up their own customized monitors for this.
Yep. So yeah, for campaigns, there is already a built-in feature. But yeah, for
Hmm.
Canvas, it is lacking. But there are ways to monitor it, as you mentioned. Uh,
Exactly.
One other thing which is commonly I've heard and I've already experienced is any platform we take, but like when we are talking about Braze here, there are multiple features of Braze, right, which the team is trying to leverage, and activating features is one thing, and teams using it and leveraging it is another thing, right? Because let's say there are hundreds of features, but hardly any brands would be leveraging 60 or 70% of those features and won't be looking into it. A lot of companies, when they try to buy Braze with the intention of using content cards for banners, just one example, right? But those features often sit untouched for years, right? When they know what is the benefit of it, but still they ignore or they don't have that experience of managing it. From your experience, what usually blocks teams from getting them live? And do you have a playbook or a framework you use to help launch those channels successfully in Braze?
Yeah, yeah. I thought about this. One of our goals might be to help teams launch content cards. It's just it's such an underutilized channel for so many teams that like I think service partners can make it a goal to just focus on content cards and it would help a lot of teams. It's like make content cards happen and I think a lot of Braze customers would be happy. So I think there's a really good reason though why it's so hard to stand up, and I always say this: it takes a village to launch content cards. And I'll talk about banners too. It's actually a little bit easier than content cards, and it's I think Braze did that intentionally so that there is better adoption for banners. They're very similar channels, but banners came a little bit later, or a lot later actually. So content cards, the reason it's so difficult is it takes marketing to come up with the campaign strategy and the execution. It takes engineering to implement a container, a content card container on their web app or their mobile app. So it's an actual part of the product where the campaign from the marketing team is going to sit in and going to land. We need designers to make sure that the design looks good. How it's going to render from the user's perspective needs to fit their branding. Images that you might be using needs to look good, whatever it might be. and then you need a product manager to make sure all the all the work is happening smoothly. That there are cases, right? What if the user doesn't have any triggers for the content card? So what's the default state? What happens? There's more than 4 content cards that they're getting. Like, do we have a carousel? Do we have buttons? Do we cap it at 4? There's all these conversations that when I think marketers hear content cards, they're like, wow, so exciting. But I didn't think about the design, the engineering, the product. It's quite literally like it's like a cross-functional project. A lot of teams bring us on to help implement and launch content cards. And the biggest role that we play is kind of the project manager, the glue that holds all the teams together. And then we're really the bridge and the messenger to all the teams. So we know what the marketing, or we listen to what the marketing team wants, and then we know how to relay it to the technical team, so that we require data in this way, and what's the use case for it, and then we loop in the product manager as necessary. So we are starting to form more of a playbook. It's not quite like concrete, but we have an idea of what the marketers want to use it. Lots of times it's carousels, banners. It can even be as simple as just a CTA copy change. And then we have an idea of what SDK methods and what limitations the engineers need to know about to make sure content cards are rendering, impressions are logging, things like that. So that's content
Yeah.
cards. Yeah. And then, one last part I'll add is banners. Braze launched banners recently, and for banners, the marketers have the ability to actually design with drag and drop within the Braze dashboard. So that actually takes away the design aspect because the marketers can do it themselves. And that makes the implementation a lot easier because it's just getting engineers to add the container. You still need a banner container, or it's called the placement technically, but you still need to decide a placement. And then from there, the marketers have more access to how it actually looks and renders on their mobile app or their website. I think you still need some collaboration with your product team to make sure everything looks smoothly. But I think that was Braze's effort to try to make this implementation a lot easier. And it's really powerful because once the implementation's there, now the marketing team has product access, changing product copies, images, maybe even like some of their experience without having to go through product and engineering every time. It's a way for product and engineering to kind of unlock a part of their app to the marketing team, to give ownership to the marketing team.
It's more of helping the marketers be independent, right, in managing it,
Exactly.
rather than having a dependency with the engineering and product team. So yeah,
That's
banners are
exactly.
definitely a life-saving for marketers, right, if they utilize it in a right manner. But the challenge which I always have seen is that adaptation, right, of those features and passing on the benefit of it. When we are talking about the benefit, when you're talking about customer feedback, right, how customers are sharing the reviews, right? Many times I've seen that there are teams who collect feedbacks, right? But very few actually use it to trigger journeys, right? Let's say I've received certain feedbacks, triggering those journeys based on feedback in Braze. You recently worked on connecting tools like SurveyKit, right, to do just that, right, which is specific to journeys based on feedbacks and reviews. What are some creative ways you have seen feedback drive lifecycle campaigns, and why can't team just do this natively in Braze?
So just out of the box with native Braze features, Braze is a very great cross-channel messaging platform, but the survey feedback aspect of it, I feel like it's just not Braze's focus. Braze is focusing on so many other cool things, and feedback survey is maybe not one of them. So there just isn't a clean way to conduct a multiple choice question or a free response question or different types of, or even things like NPS. And then after that, upon submission, triggering something to, like, trigger a follow-up campaign. The trigger part actually might be getting better with Braze. I think you can actually log some custom events upon submission, but it's the part before that where coming up with a very creative and customized survey, that's very limited in Braze. So yeah, we recently did a webinar for Now Marketing, and SurveyKit did a webinar to just kind of show off and showcase what SurveyKit can do. It was just very refreshing to see. Like, this is why technology partners exist in the Braze ecosystem. They are happy to work on certain features and aspects of Braze that Braze itself isn't quite focusing on, but these technology partners really enhance it and amplify it. That's why they're called amplifiers too. But yeah, so SurveyKit had all sorts of different cool survey types. Like I said, NPS, free response, multiple choice, and then also the cool part was logic. So multi-page surveys that you can set up the logic, custom logic for. So if I chose 5 stars, then maybe I'll go to like a more positive flow. If I chose 1 star, maybe I'll go through more of a feedback requesting flow. And then all of that, you can, when the user submits the survey, get sent to Braze with exactly the options that you chose. So I can also segment that in Braze, send that 5-star user down this path, 1-star user down this path. So it's cool. It's there's the technology partners like SurveyKit and many others are really filling in, where necessary. And I think feedback surveys is definitely one of them.
Yep. So yeah, it helps you in having a personalized communication, right, based on the feedback they've shared, right, which is
Yeah.
really amazing. Uh, when we are talking about integrating or leveraging surveys in journeys, right, it is also good to discuss about building internal tools like BrazeSmith, right, which you launched, right. Many teams end up with a graveyard and postman request and one-off scripts, just like keep campaigns running in Braze. You have actually turned that same problem into an internal tool, which you and your team built called BrazeSmith.
Hmm.
Uh, how did you decide it was worth building a tool instead of just hacking things together? And what learnings or lessons came out of that particular process which you have implemented?
Yeah, yeah. So this is BrazeSmith is really kind of a dream come true for me because ever since I was at Braze since 2020, and we get a request, a simple request, a Braze support ticket saying, "Can you delete this user?" And I'm like, "I'm a CSM. I got this ticket." I'm like, "Sure." How do I do it? There's no place in the dashboard to delete this user. And I was like, deleting is such a, I mean, I get it. It's a sensitive, it's a permanent like action, but there's really no way for us to do it on the dashboard or even in an internal dashboard that CSMs had access to. And then I do some studying and researching and realize it's only possible through the API. It's gated behind the API. Maybe that was intentional for Braze so that an action as sensitive as deleting, it can't just be done like on accident. But it was, yeah, then I had to learn how to use Postman and I had to learn like how API endpoints worked for Braze and how to set up an API key. And it's a pretty hefty process. And then over the years, our kind of middle ground solution was setting up a Braze webhook. So we had a Braze webhook. It's pretty much a Postman call, exact same thing, but I was able to save it as a template in the customer's dashboard. And I would train them, hey, if you need to delete somebody, just put their email address in between the quotes here. Just make sure the quotes are still there. Don't, change anything else. Click test, and then that should work. And if you get a 400 error, then there's a syntax error, so let us know. It was still kind of a hacky solution. So then BrazeSmith came about, and honestly, like I think just the world of AI that we live in and how development has gotten so much easier, that really expedited and made it possible for us to even create a live functioning web app like BrazeSmith, where we pretty much built a UI, a front end for users to be able to just plug in an email address and then click a button to be able to delete them or remove them from hard bounds or remove them from the spam list. And the back end we understood since 2020 is just how do we actually develop an app, which, like I said, has become more possible with the rise of AI. And nowadays, we still write scripts here and there, but now every time after we write a script, we think, should we just make this a BrazeSmith feature so we don't ever have to write the script again, and other customers can have access to this script that we just wrote. So now we think a lot about scaling and avoiding doing the same action more than twice, and determining whether it's worth it or not to implement to BrazeSmith. But yeah, just kind of taking down that like gate that the marketers are sitting behind the API wall, pretty much.
So you are trying to make it easier for the marketers, right? Not
Exactly.
going to the technical side of the things. When we are talking about marketers here, right? There are a lot of teams who don't realize that if you pass the wrong data type into Braze, like sending an array instead of a string, right, can quietly break the segmentation, personalization, and all the other things which are connected to that data type, right? What are the most common mistakes you see around data types, right? And what would be your recommendation, or how can teams catch them early before they can cause a bigger issue in Braze?
I will say if there are data type mismatches, it does get caught early because teams will just see that, it's not working, like something's not populating right. Typically, the mismatch happens at the ingestion stage. So that's when they're actually building the campaigns. It's not so common where there's already a campaign that's live and then engineering team had decided that the data needs to change and then that later breaks the campaign. It does happen, and those are harder to catch for sure. But I feel like typically it's in the data ingestion side, and you just kind of let it, don't touch it. If it's not broken, don't break it. Common data types issues I would see is definitely like passing in a number, but as a string. So it'll be like maybe a lot of times it's with money related things or like total price. So it's like the price is $99, but it's actually $ 99.00. That can't be a number. That has to be a string because it's got characters, it's got the decimal as well. But then it's like it looks like a number to a marketer, so it's like, oh yeah, it's the number value. But when they try to use it, and like they'll run into some issue where it's like, wait, it's not behaving as expected. And we take a look, we see quotes around it. It's like, oh, it's a string. So small things like that. But I actually think that data types, there really only is a handful of data types to know about, especially in Braze where they simplify it even further. And I think it's really worth marketers to just sit down and put their heads down and really learn and read into what the data types are and how they work. I can name them right now. The primary data types I call it is string, number, boolean, and date/time. Even that fourth one is a type of a string. And then the secondary data types I call it, which are arrays, objects, and arrays of objects. So arrays are just a list of the primary data. Objects are just a group of the data, and then arrays of objects. It can get a little bit complex, but I think my point is the scope of data types isn't so heavy in Braze, and I think it's worth marketers to really understand it. And it'll go a long way with having conversations with engineers and being able to catch data mismatches and just helping them become more technical in the long run. I think there's a reason why all computer science 101 classes start with data types because it's the foundation for just coding and coding principles. Yeah.
Yep, so data types are definitely a core or the basic of the computer science, and definitely marketing needs to be aware of it. And we also discussed about how marketers can educate the engineering team on about Braze, right, and the importance of
Exactly.
Braze, right? Now that's where my next question comes into the picture, right, where as a brand or there are teams who try to hire either an engineer who don't understand the overall lifecycle marketing, or there are marketers who can't execute without the development or engineering support. You have tried to build and train technical marketers who can actually design, build, and also manage inside Braze and from a technical standpoint. What makes someone strong in that role, and how do you think that or how do you think leaders should approach hiring or training for that particular opportunity?
I think first it really just comes down to the willingness to learn and curiosity from the marketer. I think a lot of times, I think traditional marketers think I'm a marketer. I don't need to be technical, right? I think about creative, I think about strategies, I think about, copy and design, but technical things, no, that's somebody else. That's just not the case anymore, especially if you're a Braze user. And that's why we just so heavily emphasize the phrase technical marketer so much because I think that's that's a new thing. That's like a new like position, and it's a really like fun and powerful position to be in to have experience of both the creative and the strategy side of the marketer as well as the technical and execution side of an engineer. And I think the technical marketer sits right in between there. So first it starts with the willingness that even though I'm a traditionally marketer, I am open to learning what APIs are and what does SDK stand for. And, I maybe I do need to lead calls with engineers and maybe I'm that person. I think it really starts there. And I think for me personally, I got that exposure when I worked at a startup. Shortly after, that was my first job in the tech world. I was a high school math and computer science teacher, so I got a little bit of exposure to the, technical side of coding principles then. But when I really jumped into the startup world, that's where I learned like, okay, I have to learn like everything. I have to be technical. I was brought on as a customer success manager and customer success analyst, but I was forced to learn APIs. I was forced to talk to engineers. So I think thankfully I got my experience there, and I think more and more marketers just having that first mindset is really helpful. So mindset number one, and then from there it's yeah, I mean it's wherever enablement you can get, right? Like we make for now marketing YouTube videos to try to help marketers with bite-sized pieces on technical features, aspects of Braze, but just not only my YouTube videos, but like so many other resources out there that we can easily Google or ask ChatGPT. A lot out there, and you have to just tinker with it. You have to try like can I make my first successful API call? And then even along that process, like it'll be so tough the first time, and you'll learn a lot of things. Having one-on-ones with engineers and kind of asking for a favor, asking for an enablement session for teaching them like how does this work exactly, and yeah, so mindset, just tinkering, experimenting, outreach, and I think the plenty of resources are there. There's so much we can learn from. It's just a matter of like, are you up for it, and are you willing to put in the effort and time to becoming a more technical marketer?
It's all about the interest, it's all about the willingness, and also making sure that if they are ready to be moving from the marketers to the pure technical marketers, right? Learning the technical stuff. So it doesn't come naturally, right? It needs to be trained, right? It just the mind needs to be made aware of it, the objective or the awareness of being a technical marketer, the need of it, and what could be achieved if they transition themselves from marketer to be a technical marketer. If they have that visibility, definitely it's easier for them to digest. When you're talking about Braze and teams and roles into Braze, right? There are many companies who start with a single Braze owner, right? Who is answerable and accountable for managing everything as we discussed earlier, and he's trying to do everything in Braze. But over the time, that role becomes unscalable, right? Because you can't just replicate one person, right, and have more people do the same thing, right? Uh, in your experience, how should Braze responsibilities naturally split as the team grows, right?
Yeah.
Be it the marketing side, be it the technical side, and what's the right balance between strategy and technical execution?
Yeah, we see a lot of teams that just have a single sole Braze owner, right? And they're running. They're like running on engine. Like they are I think they oftentimes end up getting stuck with just being able to just having to launch campaigns like click, and it's just maybe they have requests coming in from different teams, or they're just managing a handful of lifecycle canvases and making sure it's not broken or making updates, and oftentimes we just don't see them even have a chance to think about the higher level strategy, like big picture, like what are we missing, or like how are our canvases performing. Like it's just keep the lights on when it's just one person. So then eventually it as a team grows, and hopefully the marketing team has the budget and sees the need for an additional Braze person, and even just having two people manage Braze makes a huge difference. And those two people could be very similar people, but maybe owning different verticals of their businesses. Or the other way, like you mentioned, it splits is strategy and execution, where one person is really just coming up with that higher level picture, the long term goal, and then the other person is the technical expert. They know like the data that we need to use. They are good at Liquid. They know how all the canvases are set up. And these two people, strategy Braze and execution Braze, definitely like they need to work as like one cohesive team. So it's really relying on the different skill sets of other teams. And then, so then we see like, that two people Braze partnership happen often. And then as the team grows, we see entire like departments form out of that. So we have lifecycle marketing is one team. And then the other team I see is marketing technology or marketing operations. More and more like, we call it MOPS, marketing operations, or MarTech. I see we have customers that have those positions, and we're typically brought onto the operations or technical side. And now this team is just entirely dedicated to setting up the monitors, like I mentioned earlier, for daily canvas volumes. They have amazingly organized naming structures, and they know every single canvas that's live. And even if it's hundreds, and sometimes work it takes some volume, but they have a tagging structure, and they know like all their custom events are named a specific way, so you can easily remember and see it. Like it's pretty beautiful, like how organized some teams get. And then on the other hand, you have your lifecycle marketing or your CRM team that is just constantly talking about strategy and looking at their conversion and just seeing where they can increment and uplift a little bit more user engagement and retention. So, yeah, I mean, I just described like probably an evolution from a startup, like less than 100 employees, to a public 1,000+ employee team. That's kind of two extreme ends of the spectrum on how I see Braze teams evolve. But yeah, that's typically the path that we see. One owner then splits into strategy and execution, then splits into entire teams owning those sides.
No, that's really a great path where starting with one person, moving to two, dividing those responsibilities of owning Braze versus entering or pushing the data into Braze and doing all those stuff. And slowly and gradually, when you scale, it's more around making sure you have a life cycle marketing or a CRM team, while there is another MarTech, marketing ops or MOPS team, who is more focused towards the data, the quality, the existing canvas campaigns, while the other lifecycle marketing and CRM team is more focused towards increasing the product usage, right, through different channels, increasing the website visits, increasing the revenue, depending on the industry. So yeah, both team has their own goals and KPIs, and both needs to work together in order to make Braze as a successful platform for their brand. Yeah, so great initiative on and insights on that part. One other thing which I would love to understand is when they have already started leveraging Braze, they already invested the time in terms of setting up the Braze. At some point, every team, right, eventually has to answer that question on what actually live in Braze right now, right? Because they don't have a or they don't have a track of it, right? But when audits or migrations come up, right, most aren't ready. You have helped teams build real-time or provide real-time visibility into the live assets, right? How they are being moved and what is being moved, right? So would love to know your experience and journey on what's your approach to keeping visibility on live assets, and what process or tools make that sustainable.
Yeah, this would be my second dream come true. And this we're actually working on something like this, but it's a question we get a lot, right? I'm the new CMO at this Braze company, the company that uses Braze, and I have no idea what's live. And we have hundreds of campaigns. How can I see everything that's live without actually going into the dashboard and clicking on every single one? We always say that upkeep is a full-time commitment especially when the teams are big and there's so many moving parts. You know, we have seen teams make it a part of their launch process to launch the campaign and go to their campaign tracker documentation and update it. But that last part typically becomes like low priority because they're so focused on the launch, and it makes sense. And then you maybe launch like 5 or 6 campaigns and you realize, oh, I haven't updated the tracker, and then all of a sudden it's outdated. And then it's like, oh, hasn't updated in months before. And then if multiple people are owning that tracker and they're all, they all haven't been able to do that last step, like that's where things quickly get outdated. There are ways we can streamline as much as possible, and I mentioned this is something that we were working on for a customer, and something we may end up developing as another internal tool. But even things like having the HTML for all the emails, even being able to kind of automatically reproduce that goes a long way. And a lot of times, I think the biggest focus is on what their email screenshots look like. So, email branding, email copy, that seems to be more than 80% of what teams look at when they're looking at some sort of like tracking resource, tracking document. So we're looking for a way to really streamline that process. But the HTML is available through the API. So you could, in a way, like build something where you can click refresh and every day it'll regenerate like all the HTMLs that are currently live. We see teams use Figma and FigJam pretty heavily for this because the designs tend to live in Figma or FigJam already. So why not use that same resource to also use it as like a source of truth slash tracking document, like I said. We've seen Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Docs. We've seen all sorts of resource types. But I think Figma, FigJam is probably the most flexible way to go about it. And that way, when a marketing leader, marketing exec comes and they say, okay, I need to see an overview of everything that's happening. Here you go, a Figma file. You can zoom in, zoom out, get a big picture. You can add section headers for what flow this is a part of. And then you can kind of start to make like a big picture journey. If I were to build this tool, I would name it bird's eye view. That's a phrase that I always like to use. Like you get to see a bird's eye aerial view of what's happening in your Braze dashboard. So it's a lot of process. It's really building that process and then building a process to make sure that the first process is being followed. And then, and then some teams maybe just do like a monthly sync to make sure, okay, let's use this time to update everything that we're behind on. So yeah, I think this is a problem that a lot of teams are experiencing and many are creatively figuring it out. Some are more successful than others. And this is also top of mind for us to think like, how can we make this easier for everybody? Or will Braze ever build a feature that kind of makes it easy too? We don't know if that's going to happen, but that's always a direction that Braze could go also.
Yeah, definitely. Braze can anyhow take that direction because they being a marketing automation platform, they will be
Exactly.
looking into it. If not now, maybe later. This brings me to the one of the last question. And definitely, you might have heard this multiple times. Uh, Obviously, the buzzword of the current time is AI, right? With Braze adapting AI a lot into their overall features, right? Just for an example, let's say AI assistant in terms of liquid scripting, right? Giving some benefit to marketers to build liquid scripting, right, for personalization dynamic part, right, who are not well versed or who are not a technical marketer, right? Leveraging AI into sign time optimization, right? Bringing in AI into reports, right, and analysis. So Braze is trying to adapt AI into the overall platform by leveraging or pushing it into certain part of the features. What is your take and insight on adaptation of Braze, or sorry, adaptation of AI into overall Braze ecosystem, starting from building content cards, building emails, or let's say campaigns or canvas, right? Which is more of a process-driven work, right? If you try to framework it, right? Uh, do you see that is going to be the future? Maybe it might take some time, but the way AI is getting adapted across by different marketing automation platform, Braze wants to make sure that they are up in the market and competing with other platforms, right? So what is your take on the way AI is getting adapted by Braze on different features?
Definitely. So I'll give us a quick like history of Braze AI. Braze actually had AI features before AI was even cool. Like, I think the AI boom is really happening the last 2, 3 years. But even back when I started at Braze at 2020, we had a few AI features like intelligent timing, intelligent channels. And back then, I would read the phrase artificial intelligence and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, it's like they must be doing something. I didn't know what it was, but they always had something. And we had a product manager who had an AI background, and I think that person really owned those AI features. It was never like its core front facing feature. It was like Braze has it. It's available. And then, like you mentioned, over the years, as OpenAI and other AI tools are becoming more and more popular, they implemented the Liquid AI builder. So it's not perfect, but it helps people who understand Liquid structure to just be able to prompt it and then write it really quickly. It really helps with execution. Same thing with SQL Query Builder. My SQL skills used to be really good, but I'm definitely rusty now. But I still understand like select, join, tables. So I prompt it, I get the query, and I'm able to get exactly what I want, which is awesome. And then Braze also introduced copywriting assistant, and then also image generation. I think the image, I think AI as a whole is still working on it a little bit, but Braze is definitely like working on adding more AI features. This is like maybe about a year ago at this point. And it's funny because I was actually chatting with a different member from Mavlers just a few months ago, and when they asked like how is Braze adopting AI, I said, besides Liquid Builder, SQL Builder, copy generation, there really isn't much to it. We don't have like an agent or like an MCP server. And literally about a month ago, maybe less than a month ago, they come out with an announcement that they're adding MCP. And I also told the Mavlers person back then too. I said like, hey, like it doesn't exist right now, but Braze is definitely in with the trend. We have very talented product managers. They definitely know that it's coming, and they're probably working on something in the background. Turns out a few weeks later, they announced the exact same thing that we're talking about. So I think they just recently announced it. I think it's still in beta, but I think the biggest integration is MCP servers and Braze being able to kind of relay and connect its data and analytics to external platforms, external AI platforms, and then maybe getting insight or feedback. I think still a lot to learn and develop and discover in that field, but they're definitely starting to just think about capabilities to connect externally to AI platforms. So I think it's exciting. We're definitely keeping an eye out and just reading and studying as much as we can as they come out with new blog posts and new documentation pages. And yeah, I think it's just a matter of weeks or months until another big update happens. So
They are increasing the pace of launching the new AI features, and definitely you mentioned correctly that MCP is launched by Braze, so they are on that track of integrating the different or the AI platforms with Braze, so that the marketers and the technical people can leverage with the utmost potential it has so far. So yeah, that was really great insights, Alan, and thanks for being part of it. It was really great having a discussion with you, starting from understanding the overall Braze, how to consult the engineering team, bringing on the technical marketer as a persona, right? And what marketers can take as a journey from being a marketer to technical marketer, right? And also going through that overall process of audit and review and migration, right? On what are the ways they can keep a live track of the assets, right, which are getting being migrated. So really great insights from you, and super excited with the way we have heard you out so far. And I'm sure any marketers or technical people who are going to listen to this conversation, they are going to definitely inject a few of the areas into their Braze ecosystem to improve their overall performance.
yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for asking all the hard but important questions. And yeah, I shared as much as I knew, as much as I experienced. And I'm still learning every day. The more we work with our customers and the more we kind of dive deeper into Braze, like we're really evolving all together. And I think the best thing about Braze is the ecosystem and the community is very, very strong. So yeah, looking forward to having this conversation, reach others and hopefully answer some questions that they might have had. So yeah, thank you for this opportunity. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was really great having you, and thanks, Alan, for the time. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.